The way to make a story more compelling when you tell it. Many people have been asking me about this lately and even in the years before because they think it is going to make them more authoritative and more charismatic if they can tell stories properly. In one word, the simple answer to this is yes, it does make you more authoritative and more charismatic, simply because when you lead the attention of a whole group, people just, even unconsciously, see you as a person of higher authority. So they shut down internally more. What I mean by that is not that they don't voice their concerns out loud, but that all the limiting beliefs people usually have when you present a plan in a company, for example, all of those things will be shut down much more easily because their attention is being so focused on what you say that they don't really argue anymore as much. Focusing the attention is one of the main central points of using a covert hypnosis. It is to really to make them calm down their anxieties, their worries, their whatever is the things they want to argue about because they don't disagree with you because of that. When you lead their mind with a powerful story, all of that tends to calm down and they are much more receptive to whatever you want to communicate to them. So to find some clarity about how exactly can you craft a good compelling story, the first thing is to get back a little bit on the structure. How exactly do you structure a story so that people want to listen and let you finish without interrupting you? First of all, any story is kind of helping with the attention, because when you start it, the only focus of the conscious mind of the people listening to you is where is he going to end? Where is he leading that? Where exactly does he want to go with this? Or where is he going with that? This is an obsession because the conscious mind of everyone can't stand tension, conflict, not knowing, not understanding. So when a story has started and when it is not clear yet where you are going with that story, people will be like that. And they will be much more receptive and attentive to what you say, rather versus somebody who would just be enumerating facts like that. So number one, you have to do this, you're not really connecting with their mind if you do that. Whereas if you start a story, and if I start telling you about somebody I helped 3 months ago, that person was just like you, and something happened at some point during his training that made him become the greatest hypnotist of all times. Would you like to know what happened? Now you're just hooked. Your mind is hooked. If you have been listening carefully, now your mind is hooked because there is a tension created and your conscious mind can't stand to not know what happened, what happens, and how can they do the same thing eventually if it is a story that relates with you, which might be the case if you are watching this. So the overall structure of a story, of a good story, to really create something compelling, the beginning is set up for yourself in your mind the context, okay? Who, what, and why. Who are you talking about? Who is the character of my story? Is it me, something I lived? Is it a client I had? Is it a friend of mine? Who? Who are we talking about? And is the character of this story is somehow connected to the person I'm talking to? If there is no connection, nothing, people are not really going to be receptive. But if there is at least one simple link, like it is a young guy like you, it is somebody who faced a trauma like you talked about right now, whatever it is, but just one thing, one point, one detail that is implying a link between that person and the person, the character of my story, and the person listening. So who, what's happening, what is that person doing, and why? What is the goal of that person? Why did that person engage into this or that in my story? That is the overall context. Then we want to create the tension. So John, if it is the character of the story, John one day had one massive problem. People want to know what happened, what was the problem exactly. Creating the tension like that. What was the problem? You want to elaborate what is a challenge my character in the story is going to go through? And if it is a story that happened to yourself, feel free to adapt somehow. You don't need to lie, and I would encourage to never lie about anything that happened to you. You can lie sometimes about things you have seen other people doing. That is, I know, a double-edged sword, because you don't want to go too far on the lying, but you can just do a little bit of adapting your story, just a little bit, so that it connects more with the mind of the listener. But only do that with people who cannot be verified, okay? Never try to lie on things that can be verified. So if I talk about a client I had in therapy 3 months ago, who knows, like nobody's gonna check all the people I have signed up for coaching. No one is gonna check that. So I can invent a little bit. I would say it's not even lying here, it is more inventing. Inventing a few details just for the person listening to me to connect better with what I'm talking about. Then how and why did the tension resolve? So you know which challenge the character in your story is going through, then clarify for yourself how the tension is going to resolve. In your story, you know what happened. How can you elaborate more on that as you talk about it? Induce some maybe theatrical, eventually, movement, or make some gesture, and then John entered a place. And in that place, he saw something he had never seen before. That way, you have created a tension, and then you can explain, okay, where was in that room? And as you explain, the tension is resolving. And as the tension resolves, people start becoming even more in an accepting mode, in a positive mode, because they are like, this is what happened. It is really what helps people to connect more deeply with what you're talking about. And the last thing about the structure is, what was the result once the tension was gone? So once the character in my story found his answers, then what happened? Did it change his life? Once John could figure out how to become the best hypnotist of all time, he discovered that he could actually help anybody to change in only 15 minutes. And then clients were knocking at his doors nonstop. That could be a story I could be telling to people who are struggling with becoming a life coach. They don't think they are capable of getting clients. I tell that story from a client I had 3 months ago who never existed, but that will make their mind connect the dots and start building up the confidence. Oh, okay, so it is possible. I can do that myself. My hypnosis teacher had done that with me. It worked beautifully well. In the very beginning, when he told us about inductions, how to make an induction, and we only had 2 weeks of training, we were going to have 2 weeks of training, I said, there is no way we are going to be able to do that in only 2 weeks. Or like, I think I asked the question, do you really think we can do that in only 2 weeks? And he said, yeah, of course. And I only discovered later that he had no evidence it was possible in only 2 weeks. But the fact that the person telling the story is showing himself confident about, yes, it is how it happens, people just follow what the trainer, the teacher, the storyteller is talking about, if the storyteller is confident enough in how he's presenting the information. Number 2, after the structure, the next big thing for telling compelling stories is to induce poses. And I know it is something that is often appearing uncomfortable for many people, because they are like, when they are uncomfortable with silence, they can't use silence to their advantage, whereas it is one of the best ways to, again, put yourself in a state of authority. If you are comfortable with looking at people into the eyes and staying silent for a minute, or like a few seconds at least, it will really reinforce the status you have in that interaction, in that conversation. Because now they are more inclined to listen if you are comfortable with silence, which most people are not. Most people can't stand to stay with their own thoughts for more than 30 seconds. Can't do that. Just check one funny story I heard recently. Just notice whenever you are going somewhere to meet somebody and that person is late, how long before you take your phone and start numbing yourself into new social media. Because people can't stand staying silent for a minute. So when you are comfortable with that, it really reinforces the position you have in that interaction. You can control the frame much more easily when you can do that. So inducing a pause is what we are going to stick into the structure I enumerated before. It is about inducing tension. So John entered the room and he discovered one thing that he had never seen before that would change his life forever. What he learned. Okay, now I have made a pause and I have looked at you. I'm not nervous trying to hide away the fact that I'm looking at you. I'm just comfortable here. And when John discovered that, something happened. You know, inducing a pause like that is really helping people grasp much more what you're talking about. They are more focused on what you say, their thoughts shut down, because when there is a tension like that, as I said, the conscious mind is obsessed with, so what is the result? I want this to resolve. So they are much more attentive to what's going to be said just next. And number 3 is to ask more questions to make people connect the dots, to make people engage both consciously and unconsciously during the story. Whenever you can induce a question like, and what do you think about that? If there was a way to apply that in your life, do you think it could be possible or not at all? If you could find a way to change something about your problem right now, would there be a way or really nothing? What do you think I could add to that story right now? What do you think I could add to this video right now? When I ask questions like that, it forces your brain to engage to the conversation, not just stay into passive, sleepy mode, like just listening and not even paying attention. It forces you to engage. So, Marco, what do you think about this? Tell me. If I approach, even physically approach, and make a gesture in front of you, like pointing you in your direction and telling you, what do you think? Can you tell me what you think about that? Did you experience anything like this, Janet? And when I put like this a hand, mentioning people, telling their names and asking a question, it forces everyone in the room to really stick with the attention, because now their conscious mind is on the spot. They are under the spotlight. They know I make people talk and that I ask people to talk. And when I do that, everyone is like that. And the more stressed they are, the more attentive they are about this. It's kind of a sneaky technique, but I like using it. It's very fun sometimes. So it forces the brain of people to engage more, because now they are on the spot and they know they will maybe have to answer something specifically. Again, it works better when you have developed rapport with everyone, when you have developed good trust, which is the overall engagement of the people listening to you. Are you somebody who is likable enough for them to even want to listen to you for more than 2 minutes? That is a more general perspective on your personality in general, but for the specific stories, it is how it works. Another really great way to make them engage more is by raising your eyebrows when you make a pose. So, and people have discovered something very impressive about how to change their life with those kinds of videos. Have you heard about that? When I raise my eyebrows like this, in every culture of the world, raising the eyebrows is an implication to speak. It is an invitation. If I lean forward, smile, and raise my eyebrows, it is an invitation for your conscious mind to interact, to reply back to what I just said. Actually, Bandler had a funny way of using that when he was in sales. He would do something like arguing or like negotiating about the price of the car, and when the salesman was starting to elaborate on maybe we can drop the price, Bandler wouldn't say anything and he would go like this, and the salesman would be like, yeah, maybe we can do like 10%. Bandler wouldn't say anything like that, and he would keep engaging the person to see how low the salesman could go. It works. That's all I can say. It works. It's maybe not always honest, but it works. Overall, it is all about making people's minds engage much more with the things you're talking about. That is what you want to keep in mind when you tell a story. Make people more engaged into what you're talking about. If you want to develop your skills with that, there is a course still accessible down below in the description. You can just do it on your own, or you can allow me to help you and guide you one step at a time. It is called a new method to learn to use nasty loops for advanced hypnotherapists, but it can be used by anyone who needs to tell stories into their daily practice, or with people they want to influence and help in their life. You can just let me guide you and show you all the process. How can you craft a good story based on your situation? So not everyone will use stories in the same way. There are some tweaks and differences to make based on if you are a therapist, if you are somebody who has to deal with more violence in their jobs sometimes, just different adaptations. And you can just discover all of that in the course down below if you want.